Part 11. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 101. Please collect it. Although Jia Yan is a mosquito, he still has his own principles on such big matters of right and wrong. Moreover, after reading Li Qiqin's notebook, Jia Yan, who was originally not very concerned about the feud between the two countries decades ago, seemed to have a similar hatred towards the Japanese. Then it seems that the two foreigners in front are probably from the Star-Spangled Banner country. Only the Star-Spangled Banner country is likely to obtain information about the Japanese people, or they also have relevant information they plundered from the Japanese country during the war. If any human being knew about Jia Yan's analysis, they would be absolutely shocked. This mosquito's analytical ability is actually better than that of most humans. Although I don't know why China allows outsiders like you to enter the country. I only know that I am no longer a human being, and I don't need to abide by human rules at all. So I can kill these foreign guys if I want. Wait. Go ahead, if you don't die at the hands of the army of cockroaches, I, the former citizen, will deal with you. Jia Yan's compound eyes were filled with a ball of flame. He didn't know that the current situation was caused by a moment of confusion among the top brass of China. Of course, this kind of chaos would not have happened if the Star-Spangled Banner Kingdom and the Japanese Kingdom were not involved. They must have used every possible means, bribery or coercion, and they must have even mobilized many overt and covert spies and secret agents, so that China has not sent more manpower and allowed these two teams to get away with it until now. But as long as you give them a little time, the upper echelons of China will realize that no matter how powerful these foreign troops are, they will definitely surrender in China. But the other party may have seized this moment to come to this underground world and want to do something. The Chinese soldier king who was fighting below and the two stars and stripes men in front were already fighting and had reached the edge of the cave. Oh! I can't believe that such a place actually exists in China. James, don't you think this is very similar to our country's Journey to the Center of the Earth movie? Oh, maybe you haven't seen it yet, that movie, but I recommend you to watch it. Regarding the description of human nature, I think this so-called bad movie still has its own opinions. Hampton. I asked you to shut your mouth. Do you want me to find a piece of tape to seal your mouth? Two star-spangled banners were running in an unfamiliar sandy field. The two of them rushed past Jia Yan's home formed by piles of rubble without stopping at all. After exiting the cave, there was an open space outside, but in front of them was a stream with clear water. Oh, look, James, there are actually big fish in this stream. I swear the fish here must be delicious. Hampton, who looked old, looked at the stream outside the cave in surprise. Dance, old man. If you can't jump over, I think they'll think you're delicious. James accelerated a few steps while running and jumped into the air. After staying in the air for 2 seconds, he jumped to the sand on the other side 5 meters away. Kid, I think it's wrong for you to look down on an old man like this. I need to correct you. Hampton, who looked old, also jumped up. After a while, my toes were on the rocks by the stream, and my heels were hanging in the air, almost falling into the stream. He waved his hands hard, and then managed to use the inertia of forward motion to stand on the shore. Old men can dance too, man, are you right? Hampton grinned, revealing a pair of big yellow teeth. Bang bang. At this time, 2 Chinese military kings also pursued them to the stream. The 2 stars and stripes masters quickly flew into the bushes to avoid bullets. However, the Chinese soldier king did not continue to attack. Now both sides are short of ammunition, so they are saving ammunition for attacks that are not necessary. 2 soldiers stood by the stream. If you don't jump across the stream, you can't reach the shore. However, the 5-meter-wide stream still puts the 2 Chinese soldiers wearing heavy equipment in a difficult position. Use the shuttle. In the hand of the king of soldiers, Something similar to the high-tech rope equipped by the Japanese was shot out, and it pierced the other side. Then with a whoosh, the two of them drew two parabolas in the air and fell directly to the other side. Although communication with the outside world has been cut off after arriving here, I know without an order that they must not be allowed to obtain any vegetation here. While the two sides were pursuing each other through the bushes, three Japanese men and women walking slowly. The three of them looked at each other and used the equipment used for the previous landing channel to easily cross the stream. These three people paid no attention to the two groups fighting in front of them. Instead, they stood by the stream and looked at the direction. The woman among the three took out a map, looked at some scenery, and then pointed in a certain direction. Immediately afterwards, the three Japanese people walked directly in that direction without saying much. And after all humans come out of the cave. Buzz buzz. A faint sound came from the cave. After a while, a flying creature that seemed to come from the future, wearing a metal exoskeleton, emerged from the cave in slow flight. Everyone was far away from the cave. Jia Yan observes with compound eyes. The army of cockroaches was like the first time he came to this underground world, and they had not yet moved out. Jia Yan naturally hopes that the sooner these overlords appear, the better. Otherwise, with so many forces fighting in a melee, and with the absolutely powerful side of the army of worms, it would be a bit troublesome for Jia Yan to cause trouble among them. Follow those three Japanese people, Jia Yanfu's eyes flashed and he made a decision immediately. He spread his wings and flew directly across the creek, tracking the three Japanese people. The underground world, which has been away for more than a week, is still the same as it was more than a week ago, and there seems to be no change. The vegetation here is always so dense, and the temperature seems to always be warm. Jia Yan feels very comfortable here. If he hadn't been driven out by the army of cockroaches, he would have really wanted to survive in this place for a while longer. At least spending the winter here is a very good choice. But it doesn't work now. Even if the threat of the Scorpion army is no longer there, Jia Yan can't guarantee what will happen if humans discover it. A gentleman does not stand behind a dangerous wall. Even if he has the chance to stay here this time, he will definitely choose to leave. Yokota Shoiki, have you never been to this magical place before? I have never been here, but I have heard a lot of rumors about this place. After all, it was this place that made me what I am today. So I knew a lot about this place at the time, but I didn't expect that the Japanese Empire would be defeated so quickly. When I came back to my surprise, when I wanted to find this research base, I couldn't find the exact location from any information. While walking, the three Japanese people were still in the mood to chat, and they were not at all surprised by the strange things around them. Obviously, they are mentally prepared for the scene in the underground world. General, the Chinese people don't know what this title means, but if a Japanese person hears it, he will definitely be surprised, because after the defeat, the self-defense force formed by the Japanese country will be the general before the war, which is equivalent to the Chinese general. The military rank was changed to Zhang Yi. In other words, the bespectacled man called Zhang Yi was actually a senior figure in Japan's self-defense forces. Moreover, this guy who looked like he was only in his 30s actually talked about things during the last World War during the conversation. This was absolutely extraordinary, because decades had passed since that war, and the people who participated in the war at that time are still alive today. The minimum age is over 90 years old, but this person still looks so young. A black python crawling in the grass suddenly attacked the woman among the three when they passed by. That Yokota Shoiki's eyes flashed at the same moment. A clang sound. Yokota slowly retracted one arm to his waist, and the other two people only heard a series of sounds of gold and iron, and then, blood spattered all over the sky. This black python, which was more than 5 meters long, actually broke into two pieces in the air, and its bloody mouth was still so terrifying. Just as the body was broken, the python suddenly became extremely frightened. It couldn't bite anyone with its open mouth. Instead, it fell to the ground, and its huge body kept rolling. You all should be careful. It seems that this underground world is full of dangers as written in the records. Looking at the extremely tough python on the ground, General Yokota's face became a little solemn. Yes. Two Japanese men and women responded loudly. The two men also took out the weapons they carried and were alert to their surroundings. Not far away from the three of them, Jia Yan's faint compound eyes flashed slightly as he moved forward. He didn't fly very high, he just walked through the tall grass and trees. Although it is easy to encounter biological attacks at low altitude, the Jia Yan of today is no longer the same person as before. For him who is familiar with this place, except for the limited creatures in the underground world, nothing else is worth mentioning. Call out. A huge frog stuck out its tongue and stuck it to Jia Yan's metal body. Jia Yan noticed the pink tongue coming from the electric light and flint, and wanted to use his strength to avoid it. But the next moment, Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed. He actually didn't dodge and let the pink tongue stick to him. Squeak. Jia Yan was flying in the sky, not flapping his wings vigorously, but the pink tongue stuck to his own could not drag his body. Humph. Including the weight of the metal exoskeleton, my body already weighs at least 6 or 7 kilograms. You, a big evolved frog, want to drag me. Jia Yan saw that the pink tongue could not drag him down, so the light in the compound eyes has skyrocketed. Since you want to use me as food, you will be responsible for your own fault if you are killed by me. His body quickly rushed downwards. The protection of the metal exoskeleton is all round. Jia Yan doesn't need to be afraid of the opponent's toxicity, so the frog he didn't dare to kill last time will just be his first training target when he puts on the exoskeleton this time. Passing through a large leaf, the owner with a pink tongue appears below. This is a huge frog with a body of more than 30 centimeters in height. Its surface is the same as the one I saw in the underground world last time. It is bumpy and even has colorful skin. It looks like it is highly poisonous. Jia Yanfu's eyes flashed with luster. He is still a little afraid of poison. But the next moment, he still chose to attack. We have already rushed so close. If we don't try to attack, all our efforts will be wasted. Compared with before, he has many more attack methods. What Jia Yan chose this time was the sharp blades at the front of the two long legs. Poof. The big frog couldn't dodge the lightning attack from the sky. Just listen to the crisp sound afterward. Jia Yan's pair of slender front feet, carrying their own heavy dive inertia, penetrated deeply into the center of the big frog's head. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 102. Please collect. Poof. A kind of green blood spurted out from the wound of the big frog. Fortunately, the splash was not severe and did not touch Jia Yan's exposed tentacles. The big frog's brain was pierced, and he died immediately. Jia Yan flew in the air and gently pulled out the pair of front legs that had penetrated the frog's head. The two blades are indeed very sharp, and the width also matches the metal exoskeleton of the forefoot at the back. I will not be affected too much when inserting and pulling out. Jia Yan's body flew up again. The big frog fell to the ground, spilling green blood all over the floor. Jia Yan looked thoughtfully at the green blood stained on his front feet. He felt that his front feet might also have some poison, which was a good thing that he didn't need to clean off for the time being. He continued to track several Japanese people. After pressing the button, there were no major events happening at the moment, and his eyes returned to the three buildings of the factory. The tall young man's body lying on the floor of the office suddenly moved with a finger. Then, the human being who should have lost his breath slowly opened his eyes. Are really not dead, that bastard. I want to kill him. The Siberian wild tiger staggered and climbed up from the ground. The gunshot wound on his body had recovered to its original state at some point, leaving only a few traces of bullet penetration on his clothes. Very strange. The Siberian wild tiger staggered to his desk, and then sat down on the chair. He was breathing heavily, as if this could make him feel better. "Boy Li Jing, what's going on with you?" Suddenly, a sound came from the door of the office, which shocked the Siberian wild tiger and quickly turned his attention. Standing at the door of the office was actually an addict who was supposed to leave. When the Siberian wild tiger saw him, it opened its mouth and made a harsh sound like a demon crawling out of hell. "Addict, ex-senior, I was almost killed by that guy with glasses. Where is he? I want him dead." As he spoke, his tone quickly returned to normal. In the blink of an eye, it becomes the same as usual. "I just met them on the road and asked them to come here because they said you hadn't gone out yet." The addict entered the office through the door, and then his eyes suddenly froze. He stared at the Siberian wild tiger's clothes with a bullet hole on its chest. "How did you survive?" The addict stopped and grabbed the handle of the pistol with his hand. As a top expert, he can tell at a glance what kind of attack the Siberian wild tiger has been attacked before. It is impossible to survive such an attack. "Senior," Northeastern wild tiger explained quickly, "I learned from the information of my ancestors that the factory's original solution has a certain chance of saving half-dead humans. I happened to have 2 bottles of the original solution in my desk, so I saved it when I was about to die. They were used as life-saving medicine. I didn't expect it to actually work." The Siberian wild tiger seemed to take a breath of relief for a moment. "Resurrection? This factory of yours must have been built by Japanese people before. Could it be?" The addict was speechless. Among all the masters in the world, the Japanese immortal monster ranks among the top 3. Does this have anything to do with it? The Siberian wild tiger had just come back to life. After regaining its breath, it started to examine its body in surprise. "I feel that not only the wounds are gone, but my body is also different from before. It's a different kind of feeling." The Siberian wild tiger feels full of strength. "Boy, you got a big deal. But your current fighting ability is still too weak. Come on. Don't worry about this factory. Come with me. After my training, you will become stronger. That Japanese monster has taken over. It's been too long to be in the top 3, and it's time for China to find another real master and kick him down." The addict's eyes flashed. Of course, among the top 3 masters, the real strongest one will always be the Chinese senior, but after all, he is old. If he dies, our Chinese real masters will no longer be able to take over. Fortunately, this kid can see it looks like it has some potential. For it. The Siberian wild tiger is a little confused. The killer addict didn't know that the Japanese monster in his mouth actually arrived here while he was away from the factory. He even sneaked into the underground of the factory that he didn't know, and was heading towards a certain goal in the underground world 1 kilometer deep from them. What are these 3 Japanese people looking for? Jia Yan kept a distance of 30 meters and quietly followed the 3 Japanese people. Thanks to the constant sound of water flowing here, the sound of his flapping wings was well covered up. His compound eyes were faint, looking at the direction in which the 3 Japanese people were heading. There is a swamp over there, and the 3 of them look like they are crossing the swamp. They have a map. This map was obviously drawn decades ago. Has the terrain of this underground world not changed since then? Jia Yan looked at the surrounding scenery. In this place with many creatures, he originally thought that the changes should be relatively drastic. However, if the maps from decades ago could be used now, then these guesses would be wrong. Although it looks turbulent on the outside, it is actually a peaceful place. But this peace is destined to be destroyed. Bang bang bang. The sound of gunfire in the distance made Jia Yan's heart move. He flew slightly higher and took a look from above. A dense group of creatures appeared in the sky. Each of these creatures looks ferocious, and the sound of flying and flapping their wings together resounds throughout the entire underground world. They hovered in a certain direction, and individuals kept breaking away from the group and attacking downwards. The army of cockroaches has indeed appeared. Jia Yan's compound eyes are faint, the overlord of the underground world is coming. Although it seems now that it is just an army formed by ordinary cockroaches, appearing in front of the two star-spangled banners and the Chinese soldier king, it is definitely enough to scare them once. The sound of firearms kept ringing in that direction, and there were also cockroaches being hit in the sky and then falling to the ground. Those dead cockroaches have mysterious juice in their brains, but now is not the time for me to absorb it. Wait a little while. Several Japanese people in front of Jia Yan also noticed the movement behind them. After the three of them observed the rear for a while, they quickly quickened their pace. Okay. They're speeding up, I'm going to catch up. Jia Yan looked at the three Japanese people and sped up a little, keeping a distance of about 30 meters to ensure that the sound of his wings would not be detected. After the three Japanese people crossed the swamp, they turned to where a certain cave was located. That cave is. Jia Yan was stunned for a moment, watching the three people climbing up to the direction of the cave, and suddenly recalled the scene he saw before he left the underground world last time. That's right. That cave was the same cave he went to before escaping from the underground world last time. Could it be that the goal of those three people is that huge machine? Jia Yan was shocked. The last time he saw a huge machine, he had a feeling of palpitations. He always felt that that thing was very weird and definitely not a good thing. So after so long, I forced myself to forget about the machine and the three monsters lying next to it. That was just a glimpse, maybe I saw it wrong. With this thought in mind, he was denying these things. But when he saw three Japanese people holding maps and heading there, the palpitations in Jia Yan's heart reappeared again. What on earth are they going to do there? Could it be that there is what they call a divine object there? Or is the machine itself a divine object? Go over and have a look. Jia Yan was puzzled, then he activated his wings and flew quickly towards the cave where the huge machinery was placed. The distant army of cockroaches, as if chasing some ground creature, was also moving in this direction. Several masters actually found a way to run for their lives when being pursued and intercepted by the army of worms. I said, James, these big bee monsters are really terrifying. Are you still unwilling to use the power of super mutants? If you don't use it, I think we will die here before the ammunition runs out. Hampton, who had an old face, swept his arm and swept a 10-centimeter long giant beetle stabbed by a tail needle, causing it to fall to the ground. However, this cockroach was hit by human power, but it was not damaged at all. After rolling on the ground, it flapped its wings again and attacked the two of them. Individuals in the army of cockroaches are also extremely powerful. But what's even more terrifying is their overwhelming number. Just as he fended off the giant beetle, another beetle had already pounced down and stabbed it with its tail needle. Poof! Hampton's resisting arm was stabbed directly by the tail needle. Blood immediately flowed out. An ordinary giant frog with a length of 10 centimeters also has a tail needle that is 3 centimeters long. This tail needle penetrates into the muscles and injects toxins. Oh, damn, I can't feel my arms. Hampton suddenly lost all feeling in one of his arms. Walk. James barely managed to knock open a giant beetle, then stretched out his hand to pull Hampton's collar and ran quickly. The army of cockroaches is still pursuing. The two Chinese military kings were a little more relaxed than the two Stars and Stripes nationals here. They are fully equipped. As long as you protect the relatively weak arms, ankles, and other parts, you can effectively prevent the attack of the army of cockroaches. But this is also full of dangers. Captain, I just saw a few people climbing into the cave over there. They are not those two people from the Star-Spangled Banner country, nor are they from us. I don't know what kind of people they are. Do we want to go and take a look? A Chinese soldier king shouted. Okay. Let's go over and have a look. Captain Bing Wan grabbed the military thorn in his hand, hit the head of a giant beetle, and cut off its entire head. The two of them started running quickly. The target is exactly in the direction of the cave that the three Japanese people climbed up. Including Jia Yan, everyone is approaching the cave. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 103. Please collect it. The outside world, somewhere. This is the temporary headquarters established by Huaxia State in response to unexpected events. In this place, in the past, there were always various ways to keep in touch with the several warrior kings at the front of the war. But today, for some unknown reason, the news was cut off. Except for an injured warrior king, the remaining two warrior kings who were chasing the Star-Spangled Banner warrior could not be contacted. No, they must have gone deep underground. Where does that passage lead to? It's so deep that satellite signals can't be transmitted. The technician was anxious and calculated the data in disbelief. Damn it, if some key communication equipment hadn't been destroyed by those Stars and Stripes spies and Japanese spies, this wouldn't have happened. People throughout the temporary headquarters were complaining. Since the temporary headquarters was temporarily set up to deal with two Stars and Stripes nationals, some of the calling procedures required cumbersome appointment provisions, otherwise no resources would be called. But the top leader of the temporary headquarters is a senior Chinese major general. Originally, things like this kind of order clause should be easy to solve. But those foreign spies played a dirty trick. They instilled a large number of false order provisions into relevant resource units in various ways. As a result, the real order was issued, and all parties needed to go through tedious proofreading before it could be carried out. As a result, time was wasted. Damn it, there are spies working on the Ministry of National Defense, so it will take at least 40 minutes for the elite team to head into the forest. The other party played this trick, which caused us to have a big time problem. Not good. External communications have been cut off again. It would be great if we were still in the non-information age. We could send someone over to communicate and everything would be done. The top national personnel at the temporary headquarters are all very anxious. The current situation requires a race against time, but spies from the Star-Spangled Banner country and the Japanese country have done this, and even some key telephone lines have been cut off, which directly caused problems in the temporary headquarters. Some relevant units began to become confused. Of course, if such a quarrel occurs, a large number of spies and bribed officials stationed in China by these two countries will be exposed, and China will also be able to discover various problems. These problems may even cause huge losses if a war breaks out in the future. But now that it has been discovered in advance, it can be completely avoided. But what the two countries are going to do without any hesitation in exposing these chess pieces is definitely not that simple. Everyone realizes this. Quick! Everyone, hurry up! According to the news from above, we will not hesitate to have conflicts with two countries next. We must find a way to solve the current embarrassment so that the troops can go over to support. Everyone at the temporary headquarters started to get busy in an orderly manner. After a large number of spies were exposed, some people began to move their families. Or some secret sentries, after carrying out sabotage, want to quietly withdraw from the Chinese territory. If you can withdraw and return to your country, you will be a hero. However, if you cannot return, you will be dead in China. He will be treated harshly even before death, and the information a spy knows is certainly valuable. When things escalate between countries, there are no such thing as human rights or human rights. There is nothing trivial about a country, let alone this situation. The outside world was in turmoil. The Stars and Stripes and Japan suddenly announced an emergency joint exercise. A battle group consisting of a Stars and Stripes aircraft carrier and several battleships sailed to the disputed fishing island between China and Japan. It attracted widespread media attention around the world. Billions of people are worried that this is an extremely irritating event for China. No one knows whether this incident will trigger China's anger and become the trigger for World War III. In response to the provocations from the two countries, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of China held an emergency press conference and responded loudly. China has always adhered to the basic national policy of maintaining peaceful and friendly international relations since the reform and opening up. However, China will not respond to the repeated violations of certain countries. We will sit back and watch the situation develop further and will respond forcefully. The whole world is in an uproar. However, no one in the underground world was aware of these things. Of course, perhaps the personnel from the Star-Spangled Banner and Japan already knew this before entering the underground world. After all, it seems that both countries are unprepared. It was completely premeditated. Those people climbed up. Jia Yan watched as several Japanese people swung into the cave entrance several meters high through the advanced rope equipment on their arms. If he remembered correctly, it would take more than 100 meters to enter the cave before reaching the location of the machine. Now it is almost certain that several Japanese people were heading towards that machine. Maybe the Stars and Stripes people also had their destination there. It's just that they didn't have the map in the hands of the Japanese people, so they went the wrong way. As for the several military kings of China, they arrived here purely to pursue a few invaders. Jia Yan was distracted and thinking in the grass for a moment, and saw the army of worms chasing the troops of the Star-Spangled Banner and the Chinese soldier king towards the cave. Almost to him. Jia Yan quickly hid his figure better. Tap tap tap. The sound of footsteps rang in his ears. With his compound eyes, Jia Yan looked at the two Star-Spangled Banners running past him quickly. Next came the two warrior kings. Although these two men were more equipped, their bodies were also heavier and their running speed was much slower. Moreover, it consumes a lot of physical strength. Most of the giant beetles are chasing these two people and flying and attacking. On the contrary, the two Stars and Stripes nationals in front are much safer. Jia Yan still didn't move. The grass and trees in this area were so lush that even the army of high-altitude dragonflies could not detect his figure. After both parties ran past, the giant dragonflies also flew over Jia Yan's head one by one. But luckily, a giant 15-centimeter-sized moth discovered some suspicious spots in the grass. It hovers in mid-air, looking down. However, before he could land, something shining with metallic luster suddenly flew out of the grass. Poof! This metal thing is too sharp. He directly cut off the head of the giant beetle and fixed its flying figure at the moment of flight. Jia Yan is wearing a metal exoskeleton. One of his front feet seems to be playing with a machete, straightening out and then cutting it with a single stroke. This knife accompanied his body flying rapidly from the grass. It was like lightning, so fast that it was unimaginable. The blade modified from the scalpel was also extremely sharp. The giant dragonfly's hard exoskeleton could not withstand the sharpness of the blade, and its head was cut off directly with one knife. Very good. Jia Yan controlled his body and made another turn in an instant. He turned around in an instant and got into the grass again. Also falling down was the dead body of the beetle that had lost its head. Snap! The corpse hit the ground and made a slight sound. Jia Yan quickly flew to the head of the lost body. Since you delivered it to your door, I'll accept it. Jia Yan's compound eyes flickered, and with a slight thrust of the blade on his forefoot, he stabbed the beetle's head to the top of the blade. Stabbing the head, Jia Yan ran deep into the grass again. Arriving at a safe area where it was not easy to be discovered, the needle suddenly spit out from the top opening of Jia Yan's mouthparts wrapped in a metal exoskeleton. Stab into the cockroach's head. As someone who had sucked the mysterious juice from the brains of dozens of giant cockroaches, Jia Yan found the location of the mysterious juice with ease. Then the mouth needle sucked hard. Now slip away. That kind of comfort and refreshing feeling appeared in Jia Yan's perception again. A full minute later, Jia Yan stood up again. Sure enough, the best way for me to replenish energy is this mysterious juice. After coming out of the underground world, I have sucked the blood of animals several times, but I always feel that the energy supply is always insufficient. Now I am sucking a little bit of the mysterious juice of a giant cockroach. I feel power swarming out from all parts of my body. Obviously the mysterious juice is the best nutrient for me. After Jia Yan returned to the underground world, due to the high concentration of oxygen and moderate temperature here, coupled with the restoration of abundant physical strength and energy source, his body function suddenly reached its peak. Now his fighting power is definitely at the top of the peak. With the addition of a metal exoskeleton, it can already be called a killing weapon. Jia Yan looked at the sky around him. There was no longer a giant cockroach, and no other army of cockroaches flew out of their nests. The lair of the cockroach seems to have decided that sending out such an army of 100 cockroaches can deal with all the intruders. Of course, they haven't seen Jia Yan yet. If they did, it is estimated that the scene where the dragonflies went out in full force to intercept Jia Yan in the entire underground world will happen again. Of course, this is still possible. Jia Yan came to the underground world with the original purpose of dealing with the army of cockroaches. Before doing this now, he wanted to investigate what a few human beings were doing. Let's go. I'll follow you to the cave and have a look. Spreading his wings, Jia Yan flew towards the cave where the huge machine was hidden. While he was sucking the juice from the cockroach, the 2 stars and stripes men had already begun to climb the cave, and the 2 warrior kings also came near the cave. However, the giant cockroach besieged them with great intensity, making it impossible for them to climb the cave. Just constantly tired of dealing with air attacks. As for the 3 Japanese people, they had already entered the cave and disappeared. I have to go in quickly and see what the 3 Japanese people are doing. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed faintly. He suddenly unfolded his body and flew towards another place. When he hurriedly avoided the swarming army of scorpions, he entered the cave through a small entrance. Now the cave entrance is not far away, and there are no giant scorpions guarding it. Jia Yan easily entered this small cave entrance by relying on the cover of vegetation. The familiar narrow scenery appeared in his eyes. Walk. Jia Yan flapped his wings and his speed suddenly became faster. Weaving through the narrow space, approaching those Japanese people at high speed. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 104. Happy National Day. Tap tap tap. The footsteps in the cave were very clear and distinct. Jili guala, the Japanese's cautious voice came from the front. Jia Yan's eyes flashed slightly. These Japanese haven't even reached the place where the huge machine is hidden. But think about it, in such a weird underground world, humans will always be very careful. Jia Yan also slowed down a little. Yokota Shoiki, this place is very weird. It is different from the cave where the sacred objects of our Japanese country are located. Among the 3 Japanese people walking in front, the woman looked at the scenery around her and said with a pale face. Who said it was different? It is said that when the sacred cave was first discovered, the scenery was not much different from here, and there were also some weird creatures in it. But then the Japanese Empire's troops began to enter, and those creatures became extinct. Shoiki Yokota, who was wearing sunglasses, shook his head and said, have you seen the luminous algae on this cave? It is said that the original sacred cave also had similar plants, but during the Japanese Empire, the army entered there and did not know it was moved. After the divine object was somewhere, all the luminous algae there died, and even the strange substances in the air disappeared, and finally the divine object became a dead thing. We came here this time to confirm whether the machinery in this Chinese cave is similar to the sacred objects of my Japanese country. If so. Yokota paused slightly and frowned. There is a sound ahead, it sounds like that of a flying creature, we have to speed up. As he spoke, his walking speed suddenly increased by a few beats. The sound heard by Shoiki Yokota was indeed the sound of Jia Yan's wings, but he mistook the sound for the sound of the army of cockroaches from behind. Jia Yan entered the cave so late, but arrived at the giant machine earlier than these people. In this deep and peaceful cave, above the head are luminous algae that glow slightly. The main passage of the cave is about 3 meters high. This cave should have only one entrance and exit, and the whole thing is like a simple curved line. But in the center of this line, there is another cave connected to this cave, and it is also 3 or 4 meters high. Jia Yan has now reached the bifurcation of this line. This time, he didn't fly over in one breath. There's no army of giant beetles chasing him. There's no reason to fly over here quickly. So this time I can take a good look at the bifurcated cave and the things in the cave. At first glance, it looks like a very postmodern style. Jia Yanfu's eyes flashed with shock. Last time I only saw a vague glimpse of it. This time I saw it clearly. It was indeed a huge machine. The streamlined mechanical body reflects the light of luminous algae. The overall production process seems to be magical, with smooth lines. The appearance can be said to be one piece, with no screws or welds visible. It is more than 3 meters high and about 3 meters wide. It is square, and although it is not extremely beautiful, it does not destroy its sense of science fiction at all, making people dazzled by it. The machinery is eye-catching, but next to this machinery, what attracts even more attention are the 3 huge monsters lying prone. These 3 monsters stood on the same spot, looking like 2 meters high. Because he had a glimpse of the monsters last time, Jia Yan was not surprised to see them again this time. They have 6 slender legs, with a height of 2 meters and a body length of only about 2 meters. If I had to describe it, they look a bit like spiders, but there are only 6 legs, which are very different from the 8 legs of a spider, so Jia Yan can't use any creature to describe it, it can only be said to be a strange thing. But this kind of dissimilarity doesn't look so easy to provoke. Its entire body has an exoskeleton-like and metal-like armor. This kind of armor does not have any gaps or flaws. Just like the huge machinery around them, it is integrally formed, and even the rotating joints are tightly protected. There is a round arch on the top of the body, and it is unknown what is in the belly. Its head is not very big, and it is completely retracted into the abdominal armor at the rear, a bit like a turtle with a shrunken head. What a scary monster! Jia Yan looked at the monsters. Although he didn't see them move, he still felt that they were not that simple. I know why I always feel that this place is so scary. The reason is not the machine, but these 3 monsters. The more Jia Yan looked at them, the more he felt that these 3 monsters were very terrifying. He didn't want to get close enough to see if they could move. So retreat decisively. The wings vibrated and Jia Yan tried his best to lower the sound of his flight. His eyes searched the cave. I found a cluster of stalactites growing downward in the main cave. People in some places also like to call them stalagmites. In the underground world, stalactites are extremely common. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed, and then he flew towards a hidden place where the stalactite was. The 6 legs tightly grasped the roots of the stalactite, and the whole body was in an inverted position. Jia Yan was just hiding at the top of the cave. There is a small gap at the root of the stalactite he chose. The gap is just enough for his compound eyes to quietly observe the outside world, but it is extremely difficult for people outside to see his figure. And there is no luminous algae growing around him, so his dark metal exoskeleton is hidden in the darkness and complements each other perfectly. Not long after, the footsteps, which were not far away, gradually approached and became very close. 3 Japanese people appeared. Oh! Jiligawa! Jiligwalaji Ligwala! Jia Yan saw that the 3 Japanese people were surprised when they saw the mysterious giant machine. But when they saw the 3 giant monsters standing next to the machine, their expressions changed wildly. Even the one who looked like the man in sunglasses who was the leader of the 3 also broke into a cold sweat on the spot. These 3 people must know about this machine, but they have obviously never seen the 3 monsters next to the machine. Let's see if they are approaching, so they can help me explore the way. Anyway, these Japanese people risked their lives to come here, and they must have a purpose. Those monsters won't move, so I guess they won't just retreat like this. Yokota Shoiki, what kind of monster is this? Why have I never heard of such a thing near a sacred object? Are the sacred objects in the Huaxia kingdom different from those in the Japanese kingdom? The 2 men and women who followed Shoiki Yokota were no longer calm. It was obvious that the shock of seeing 3 giant creatures made them extremely frightened. Beijialu. You see clearly, these are just dead things that cannot move. The majestic Japanese warriors, as you are really not as good as our ancestors decades ago. Please cheer up one by one. Yokota shouted angrily, causing the faces of the 2 men and women who were about to run away in panic to turn red. Although his face was a little solemn, he was a world-renowned strong man after all. Even though he was a little shocked at this time, he had no idea of retreating. The divine object itself is an extremely miraculous thing. Although in modern times, some senior scientific researchers in our Japanese country have speculated that it is a relic of some ancient civilization, but these have nothing to do with me. I just need to complete the task. Shoiki Yokota looked at the 3 huge monsters solemnly. As a person who is unconventional in his own right, he knew very well that there were still some unexplainable things in this world. He himself is one of them. The Japanese divine object is one of them, and the machine that resembles the divine object in front of me is also one of them. But from now on, the 3 monsters standing next to the machine will also be included in the unexplainable things. Japanese people are easily stimulated by righteousness and other things. When stimulated, they feel as if they have been injected with chicken blood, as if they are mentally ill. I'm sorry Yokota Shoiki. We were wrong. Please let me, Yamamoto, go over and find out. Hearing Yokota Shoiki's reproach, the man with 2 scars on his face blushed, as if he had just done something shameful. He swept away his previous panic and took the initiative to apply for a dangerous mission from Yokota. Very good, this is what I, a Japanese warrior, should look like. Yamamoto, go and investigate, be careful of these 3 monsters. Hi, Yamamoto seemed excited. Like a righteous man who died generously, he strode towards the huge machine in the fork in the road with his head held high. During this performance, even if Jia Yan couldn't understand Japanese, he could guess what they were saying from their expressions and movements, and he immediately burst into laughter. The Japanese people are still the same, what do you call the samurai spirit? But when he saw the man with the scar on his face walking into the Bisha cave and, Jia Yan also had a serious expression on his face. It's okay for this person to explore the road, but now it's time to see if those 3 machines are alive. If so, Jia Yan would definitely not stop for half a second. He flew straight away and ran away without hesitation. This kind of thing is beyond common sense. If you don't escape, you will definitely be courting death. Yamamoto walked into the cave. There were also luminous algae in the cave, which illuminated the cave brightly. The cave is not deep, only about 7 or 8 meters deep, so after placing the huge machine and 3 giant monsters standing there, there is almost no free space. Swish swish. Yamamoto cautiously approached the cave, holding a pistol tightly in his palm and with a very nervous expression on his face. Jia Yan believes that this person is definitely a master in the outside world, but now in this cave, He behaves like a frightened child. Of course, it's not his fault. This is how anyone would behave when faced with the surreal scene in front of them. As Yamamoto approached step by step, the giant machine was right in front of him. Yamamoto slowly stretched out his other arm that was not holding the gun. The palm touches the mechanical surface. Snap! Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 105. Happy National Day. Did everyone have a great time today? Don't forget that Baiyu was hiding in the room and coding like crazy during everyone's vacation. Remember to at least vote for recommendation, thank you. Nothing happens. Yamamoto let out a long breath. The two people outside the cave also looked relaxed. Even Jia Yan, who was hanging upside down in the darkness of the stalactite, felt relieved. This man's palm touched the machine, and the three monsters hadn't moved yet, so they probably wouldn't move at all. What on earth are these? Are they related to the unique ecosystem of this underground world? Jia Yan thought in his heart, if this machine has nothing to do with those behemoths in the underground world, then it is definitely impossible. Because an ecologically complete world will not simply appear. He has always believed that science can only be called science if it is rigorous and well-founded. However, the existence of this world violates too many scientific bases. At least with current Earth science, it is impossible to explain why this underground world has good air and enough nutrients to provide the survival of a large number of organisms. These unexplainable things come together, and the appearance of such a machine that cannot be explained by science makes people even doubt that this machine is working. The huge machine has many metal pipe-like things inserted into the ground. Yokota Shoiki. This machine seems to be still running. Not long after Yamamoto put his palm on the surface of the machine, he suddenly screamed. His palm also retracted as if he had touched something terrible. Don't worry, our Japanese gods are the same. As soon as General Yokota saw that there was no danger, he also walked inside, but deliberately avoided the area where the three monsters were. He came to Yamamoto's side, waved to him to step aside, and then put a palm of his hand on the surface of the machine to fumble around. Not far from the cave, there was the sound of slightly staggering footsteps. Lord Yokota, they are coming. The Japanese woman standing outside the cave heard the sound and shouted quickly. Shoiki Yokota in the cave didn't show any emotion, but continued to explore. Tap tap tap. The steps of the two people became clearer, and it seemed that there were two other heavy steps following behind them. Jia Yan was hiding at the top of the main cave. With his keen tentacles and ears, he even heard the flapping sounds of many giant cockroaches at the entrance of the cave further away. He followed the group of people who finally entered the cave, attacking and chasing them in. Next time, it will be very lively here. Jia Yan hid his figure deeper. He was not sure whether the army of cockroaches would find him in any special way, but he was confident that he could evade the eyes and ears of the humans below. Click. Yokota fumbled around, and his expression finally changed slightly. Somewhere in the giant machine, he fumbled for a button that he could press. This button is very hidden. If you don't know it, you may not be able to find it even if you look for it for a long time. The fact that Shoiki Yokota can find it so easily shows that he knows a lot about this kind of machinery. After the button was pressed, the machine made a slight whistling sound. What's going on? Jia Yanfu had a look of shock in his eyes, looking at the strange changes in the machine after Shoiki Yokota pressed the button. Click, click. There was a slight noise. Along with the sound, there was a strange movement somewhere on the surface of the machine. Cha-cha. A little crack seemed to have appeared for no reason and appeared on the side of the machine. The crack slowly expanded, and a tiny bit of blue light emerged from the crack. And there was a faint white haze rising in it, but the smoke quickly dissipated in the air, as if blending into the air and disappearing. Jia Yan's entire eyes were eroded by the light blue color, and his eyes glowed with a faint blue luster. The blue color is so dazzling and confusing that people can't help but feel mysterious. What is the thing inside? Jia Yan once again discovered that his biological organs were transmitting signals of desire. Similar desires have appeared before when seeing purple-red medicinal liquids and black liquids, but never once have they been so strong as this time. Longing, yet fearful. It seems that this is an excellent thing, but it is like poison to yourself, and you are destined to die if you eat it. Complex emotions were transmitted to Jia Yan from the biological instinctive senses. This complex and contradictory sensory stimulation made it almost impossible for him to hide properly, and he almost fell from the darkness of the inverted stalactite. Fortunately, Jia Yan's ups and downs were not the same anymore. At this time, he stabilized his 6 legs a little, allowing them to grip the stone surface more firmly, and then his body hung upside down between the stalactites more stably. Not only him, but the 3 humans below were also attracted to the blue light. Several people were breathing rapidly. When the crack is completely opened, the mechanical surface is like a drawer being pushed out, and an object glowing with blue light is pushed out from the inside. It was sent out by a thin layer of square metal, and when the whole thing came into contact with the air, it began to volatilize and make a crackling sound. This object is like a blue salt block, composed of something like crystals, but the crystals are dark blue in color. And when they come into contact with the air, they will volatilize, but not very quickly. Yokota Shoiki, what is this? Is this our mission? Yamamoto and the Japanese woman were both stunned. They didn't know why, but when they saw this thing, they both had a biological instinct and thought it was a supertonic. This is it? Jia Yan, who was hanging upside down in the darkness of the stalactite, was also full of biological instincts. Compared with humans, this thing seemed to be more attractive to him, and it even felt like Jia Yan could hardly control his self-control. Just like a person who has been hungry for a long time, seeing a big meal, his whole body reveals a deep desire. Hey Japanese people, don't move. Just when everyone was attracted by the big blue crystal, a loud shout made everyone recover from their dazed and obsessed state. Even Jia Yan didn't notice that 2 Stars and Stripes nationals had arrived in front of the cave. Hampton held 2 pistols in his hands, one pointed at the Japanese woman standing outside the cave, and the other pointed at Yamamoto inside the cave. As for the super mutant James, his face was solemn at this time, and his eyes that should have been blue turned into a golden color. He was holding a firearm in his hand that had never been used before. Although the overall appearance was no different from ordinary firearms, when used at this time, it was obviously not an ordinary thing. This pistol is pointed at the most dangerous monster among the 3 Japanese people. It is also the top 3 strong men in the world who they have been taught not to provoke since they became masters, Japanese Yokota. Precisely because Yokota was too strong, this James' previous relaxed and carefree expression became extremely solemn. He will not belittle himself, he has turned on the super mutant state, and he is confident that he can fight against monsters. I asked who it was, and it turned out to be you two. Shoiki Yokota smiled and looked at the 2 Stars and Stripes nationals standing outside the cave. He had no consciousness of being pointed at a gun, as if the dark muzzle of the gun was not pointed at him. Of course, as a little bird behind figure, he naturally understands the battle between China and the people of the Star-Spangled Banner, but compared to the arrogance of the people of the Star-Spangled Banner entering China in a grand manner, he, a world-class monster, chose to sneak into China quietly incognito, and even arranged for one of his pretenders to hold a meeting in the Japanese country, thus hiding it from other countries in the world. They even did more behind-the-scenes tricks, such as kidnapping Yetongyu and bribed the man with glasses next to the Siberian wild tiger. These were all actions to determine some inside information about the factory. I just didn't expect that after I was already one step ahead, I was still intercepted by 2 strong men from the Star-Spangled Banner country. Monster, I know you know how to whisper. Pick up that thing, then slow down and throw it over. Hampton held the gun in his hand. Although his tone was very casual, his movements did not feel casual at all. Although the man and woman were not well-known strong men, they were definitely not ordinary people who could come to perform a mission with the Japanese monsters. So the two masters of the Star-Spangled Banner did not underestimate it at all. Monster Yokota raised the corner of his mouth into a smile that was not a smile, then slowly stepped forward and took the palm-sized blue crystal into his hand. This crystal does not seem to cause harm to the human body, but when held in the hand, it is like an ice cube, and a kind of gas seems to be evaporated by human heat. The drawer where the dark blue crystals were placed, after the crystals were taken away, made a little zzz sound, and then retracted into the machine with a swish sound, and the surface of the machine suddenly seemed like there is no gap at all, it forms a hole again. Good, now throw it over here. At this juncture, no one was observing the magic of the machine itself anymore, and the gun James pointed at Yokota didn't even tremble at all. He narrowed his eyes slightly and issued an order. Yokota Shoiki is still smiling. Just when his expression changed slightly and he was about to do something. You should be all of you and you are not allowed to move. The two kings of Chinese soldiers emerged from behind them again. The two stars and stripes nationals had long been wary of the Chinese soldier king who might appear behind them, so however, they did not expect that the equipment on these two people was so rich. After entering the cave, they pulled out the outer cloth of the body armor and put it on their bodies, and their whole bodies gradually became transparent. This is an invisibility cloak developed with the latest technology, but because the technology is still insufficient, it is not very effective in actual combat. But in the dark environment of the cave, the two warrior kings used invisibility cloaks to hide their figures, and they were able to hide it from everyone. Now, one of them is holding a miniature submachine gun with bullets still left, and the other is holding a new Chinese rifle that can fire continuously. Their deterrence greatly controls the scene. In a small space, the top combat power of three countries is compressed. As for the place further away, Jia Yan saw a cloud of smoke, inside which there was the sound of an army of cockroaches flapping their wings. Two of them even fell directly to the ground after passing through the smoke. That's poisonous smoke. The equipment of the two warrior kings is indeed complete. Jia Yan looked at the situation below and felt that the air was frozen. Although the king of soldiers seems to be in control of the situation, everyone knows that it is like a tight string that may explode at any time. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 106. Please collect it. If anyone else besides Jia Yan was unmoved in this explosive battlefield, that would be Shoiki Yokota, who watched the changes calmly. Compared with the vigilance he had when facing the mysterious machine before, when faced with this scene, the so-called monster man raised the corner of his mouth and looked at the changes in the field. The man wearing sunglasses is very scary. Jia Yan was hanging upside down in the darkness. If anyone could see the whole situation clearly, it was him, an outsider. Yokota Shoiki, throw that thing over here. Since this thing was found in China, there is no reason for you foreigners to take it away. Captain Bingwang looked at Shoiki Yokota with slightly solemn eyes. Of all the people here, no one else is as powerful as Shoiki Yokota. And there are rumors that this monster has lived for more than 90 years, and is about the same age as the world's strongest man from China. However, this man still looks middle-aged and often appears in the world to perform tasks. On the other hand, the famous old man from Huaxia Kingdom, who is known as the world's strongest man, has been in a state of washing his hands in recent years, and the world has long since lost sight of him. Even though the situation was like this, everyone was focusing on this monster wearing sunglasses. Yokota held the blue crystal in one hand and shook his head slightly. Do you Chinese know what this is? he asked. No need to talk nonsense, as long as we get it, we will naturally know what it is. The captain of the Soldier King narrowed his eyes. Speaking of which, he is also a world-renowned strong man. Otherwise, he would not have fought with two top strong men from the Star-Spangled Banner country for so long and still not been at a disadvantage. But compared with the world's top players like Yokota, he seems a little unqualified. Precisely because he had a face-to-face conversation with the most senior man in the world at the national level in that town in China, he was very nervous now. He is not afraid of anyone here, but Shoiki Yokota, who claims to be able to go head-to-head with the old man from China, has no confidence at all. I'm sorry, our Japanese country will not hand over this thing, Yokota Shoiki said lightly in language. Hey! Monster Yokota, our Star-Spangled Banner nation must have half of it. Hampton, with an old face, opened his mouth and screamed in surprise. Yokota Shoiki frowned slightly. To put it bluntly, the Star-Spangled Banner is the big brother of the current Japanese country. If it really eats alone, the Japanese country will not be able to eat. I said, neither of you is going to take anything away from here. Put your things down for me. Captain Bing Wang was very angry at both sides' actions of not taking him seriously. Finally, he aimed at the Japanese General Shoiki Yokota and pulled the trigger. Another Bing Wang teammate who had been cooperating for a long time also fired suddenly with a tacit understanding. Captain Bing Wang uses China's latest repeating rifle. This rifle is still under internal testing, and the model name has not even been decided. But Captain Bing Wang has long started using this rifle, and it has even become his main equipment. Another person used a micro-submachine gun. At close range, the firepower of the submachine gun was enough to cover up its lack of accuracy. Both of their guns spit out flames. Da-da-da. Gunshots resounded in the small space. The two masters of the Star-Spangled Banner had their pores erected, and they felt like they were being shrouded in death at that moment. As a super mutant, James' mobility increased to the limit in an instant, and the golden color in his eyes became even brighter. The legs seemed to expand instantly, and the entire thigh became thicker. The moment the two warrior kings pulled the trigger, this person jumped away and avoided the bullet's shooting range. The main target of the two warrior kings was Shoiki Yokota, who was standing near the machine. This monster feels so oppressive that I can't feel at ease unless I deal with him first. Tongues of fire sprayed towards this immortal monster. Facing the ferocious firepower coming from the rapid fire in front of him, Yokota raised the corner of his mouth in an arc and raised it even more. Totally a smile. At the same moment when the bullet tilted, this old monster that had been around for decades moved to the right with strange steps, as if strolling. Miraculously, the bullet missed Shoiki Yokota at all. Captain Bing Wang frowned. The rifle in his hand suddenly vibrated strangely. Huh, Yokota shouted in surprise as he dodged the bullet. Snapped. His sunglasses were directly hit by the bullet fired by Captain Bing Wang's strange shaking. The glasses were broken, and debris was flying in the sky. Yokota revealed Shoiki's eyes that had been hidden under his glasses. Jia Yan, who was curled up at the top of the cave, felt as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake when he saw these pair of eyes, and couldn't help but feel chilled all over. What kind of eyes are these? Cold and murderous. Very good, it seems you learned a little bit from old man Hua. General Yokota's eyes seemed to have a dark light, which was scary. Mr. Hua in his mouth is a strong man in China's country, a figure of the same era as General Yokota. Captain Bing Wang has learned some of Mr. Hua's unique skills. It seems that this battle will not end so easily. Hey, hey. People from China, it's too rude of you to fight me like this. Come on. Try my shooting skills. At this juncture, the Stars and Stripes people jumped out to disrupt the situation again. The Chinese Soldier King quickly rushed into a nearby bunker. The three parties actually started fighting like this. The scene is very chaotic. Only one person stood in the hail of bullets without seeking cover. The bullets fired at him seemed to automatically avoid this monster. In fact, his senses were so strong that he dodged the incoming bullets without a moment's delay. This is a level of existence beyond anyone present. General Yokota had an indifferent expression on his face. He stood in the battlefield, one hand slowly reaching towards his waist. There is a Japanese samurai sword scabbard there. The slender blade lies in the scabbard, waiting to be unsheathed and drink blood. Even Jia Yan, who didn't understand the E language and was hiding in the shadow of the stalactites, felt the power of this monster. Who is this person? You are not afraid of bullets. He is too strong. Jia Yan looked at Yokota Shoiki's action of drawing his sword, and felt panic in his heart. In the extremely fast-paced battlefield, this man was the only one who was slowly drawing his sword. The feeling of dissonance is too strong. No wonder the monster they were talking about turned out to refer to this person as a monster. So strong. When this knife is pulled out, it will definitely drink blood. The Stars and Stripes people were shooting at the Chinese soldier king, while the other two Japanese men and women were hiding in the blind corner of the machine, aiming at both sides outside and firing bullets at them. Shoiki Yokota finally draws his katana. Jiligawa, he shouted in Japanese and rushed towards the Chinese soldier king. It's too fast. Jia Yan suspected that this person's instantaneous speed had far surpassed that of the world champion, reaching a level that was almost unreachable by humans. The captain of the soldier king was naturally shocked, but what can you do when faced with a monster that can even dodge bullets? Seeing that the blade of Shoiki Yokota's katana was about to hit the body under the heavy equipment of Captain Hyobu. Everyone could see that even if he was fully armed, Shoiki Yokota's sword would probably cut the body of Captain Hyobu directly in two. Don't use scientific principles to explain the national-level monster in Wagyu town. General scientific principles cannot explain such a guy who is one of the top 3 in the world. Buzz. This is the moment of truth. An unprecedented harsh sound broke through the air, suddenly coming from the poisonous smoke not far from the cave. It's a fluttering sound. But compared to the ordinary giant beetles that chased everyone in the past, this sound was simply amplified several times. The frequency is also several times higher. A certain purple figure seemed to have strong anger in its wings. Ignore the poisonous smoke and jump out directly from the poisonous smoke. The speed is too fast. The sound is almost the same as the sound of a plane taking off. It directly used its half-meter-long body to knock it out. Purple cockroach. Jia Yan, who was hiding on the top of the stalactite, quickly curled up even more when he saw this angry figure. Purple worm, the absolute overlord of this underground world. I once chased Jia Yan until he had no way to go to heaven and no way to go to earth. Unexpectedly, they were not even afraid of the poisonous smoke and ran directly into it. Buzz. The purple beetle has obviously gone into a rage because too many of its kind have been killed. When he saw Yokota Shoiki, the most prominent figure in the crowd, he directly used the inertia of rushing forward and bumped into him. Shoiki Yokota, who was swinging his sword to kill the captain of the Chinese soldier king, was also startled by the flying monster that suddenly disrupted the situation. Then he had no choice but to turn the blade and swung it down, hitting the flying giant purple beetle. Clang! The sound of gold and iron echoing from the place where the katana and the purple worm met. Poof! The next moment, there was the clear and crisp sound of the samurai sword slashing into the purple cockroach's body. Shoiki Yokota's sword actually cut off the giant purple beetle's bullet-blocking body. But this is not his absolute winning rhythm. After all, the purple beetle is a powerful creature in the underground world. Its body was too hard, and just after it was cut into a certain distance by the blade, the purple cockroach became ferocious. Regardless of his own fatal injury, he lifted the tail needle. Poof! It used a life-for-injury strategy, and thrust its tail needle into Yokota Shoiki's chopped arm like lightning. Although Shoiki Yokota is called a monster, he has no monster-like defense when faced with a real monster attack. This tail needle actually pierced Yokota Shoiki's arm with one blow, and then the poison in the purple frog's tail needle was poured into his body. Ah! Yokota Shoiki's expression finally changed at this moment. He used both hands hard and swung his katana down hard. The katana stuck in half of the purple crocodile's body was finally completely cut off, directly cutting the purple crocodile, the king of the underground world, into two halves. The two halves of the purple beetle's body hit the ground, struggling continuously. Even if they were cut off, they still looked like they would not die for the time being. On Shoiki Yokota's side, one arm was injured, and the poison immediately spread. The arm and half of his fingers turned purple. Yokota-sama. Yokota Shoiki. The two Japanese people hiding behind the huge machine were stunned by the scene in front of them. The people of the Star-Spangled Banner and the king of Chinese soldiers, who were almost wiped out by Shoiki Yokota, were all horrified and showing joy. Yokota, an old monster who has dominated the human world for decades, was actually stabbed by an unknown real monster in this underground cave. Naturally, they don't know that the purple worm is also the king of the underground world. Yokota's ability to cut it off with one sword has shown how powerful he is as a human monster. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 107. Please collect it. And just when several parties, including the people of the Star-Spangled Banner, were about to launch a desperate attack on the top 3 Japanese monsters in the world. On the other side of the poisonous smoke, a new mutation came again. Buzz. Buzz. 3 purple beetles in front and behind passed through the poisonous smoke area, and one by one they flew towards the battlefield. As the absolute overlords of the underground world, they will not allow other creatures to offend their majesty. What's more, the invading creatures this time have actually killed so many of their companions. Perhaps there is also a way for giant cockroaches to transmit messages when they receive news of the tragic death of their companions. These purple cockroaches are all extremely angry. That's why we all mobilized to hunt down the intruders. But when these purple beetles rushed through the poisonous smoke, they saw that they had arrived first, but now they were cut in two, rolling on the ground, behind the purple beetle that was struggling before death. The compound eyes of these purple cockroaches were filled with a purple-black color almost instantly. To kill ordinary worms is to touch their reverse scales. But these intruders actually killed a brother with the same appearance as them. This is like killing them half their lives. Absolute fight to the death. The giant purple beetles became extremely violent one by one, flapping their wings faster, and their ferocious tail needles were ready to attack. Along with 3 purple cockroaches rushing through the poisonous smoke, there were more than a dozen behemoth giant cockroaches rushing through the poisonous smoke. These poisonous smokes are obviously only effective against ordinary giant beetles. The remaining giant beetles with a size of about 20 centimeters have no great effect. These dozen or so huge giant beetles also rushed out and followed the 3 purple beetles into the battlefield. There are so many of these monsters. Everyone's expressions changed drastically. The ordinary giant dragonfly that chased everyone before was just a small man with a body of about 10 centimeters, but the purple dragonfly that broke through the poisonous smoke in front of him not only had an exaggerated body of half a meter in length, but also had the same attack and defense power as a real monster. Scary. Even Shoiki Yokota, one of the top 3 players in the world, was tragically injured, and the others were even more unbearable. The kings of the underground world are defending their majesty as the kings of the underground world. Escape. The 2 powerful men from the Star-Spangled Banner nation standing at the farthest point immediately chose to flee deeper into the cave. Of course, Jia Yan knew that the cave at the back also had an exit. Although it was a little smaller, there was still no problem in accommodating one person. These 2 Star-Spangled Banners instantly made the right choice. A man and a woman from Japan had already rushed to the injured and poisoned Shoiki Yokota. The woman kept shooting the purple beetle that was rushing towards her with a pistol. The bullets hit the exoskeleton of a purple beetle that flew towards her and kept popping out. Mars. But the purple beetle didn't move at all. There were only a few marks on the surface of its body, but it wasn't enough to be fatal. It still jumped in front of the Japanese woman, and then stabbed directly with its tail needle. This woman was obviously a powerful master. The moment the purple beetle stung her, she turned around and jumped. The woman's light body allowed her to move flexibly. After rolling on the ground, she jumped directly to a distance of 3 to 4 meters. Yomura-san, don't get stuck with them, get out of here quickly. Yokota Shoiki is riddled with poison, but after all, he is still a strong man on the world monster level. Anyway, he already had the stuff, so he ordered his 2 men to retreat quickly. This mission made this monster-level master of the Japanese town feel a life-and-death crisis. He originally thought that his opponents were just masters sent by various countries, but he did not expect that there are actually these terrifying flying monsters in the underground world. When fighting humans, he is at the monster level, but when fighting monsters, he is also a monster, and Shoiki Yokota has no advantage at all. However, the ability to judge instantly can still be seen. The 3 of them supported each other and followed in the direction where the Stars and Stripes people were escaping. Let's go, the 2 soldier kings also followed a few others and fled deeper into the cave. However, they have more equipment, so their movement speed is not as fast as the 2 groups in front of them, so they are at the bottom again. Buzz. The poisonous smoke behind seemed to become thinner, and the sound of countless giant cockroaches flapping their wings resounded. The army of cockroaches is out in full force again this time. No. If there are so many cockroaches, I will be exposed too. Jia Yan heard the noise behind him and quickly flapped his wings. Several purple cockroaches, as well as the supergiant cockroach in the army of cockroaches, which is larger than ordinary giant cockroaches, have already passed through the stalactite area where Jia Yan is in the process of chasing several groups of people. It's just these guys that Jia Yan is afraid of. As for the next large group of ordinary cockroaches, Jia Yan is not very afraid. I can't make the same choice as them, because that would mean I'm following behind the purple beetle. If they turn around, I'll be the one getting dumped. So, I can only rush forward. The luster in Jia Yanfu's eyes sparkled. Buzz. After thinking about the route, Jia Yan no longer hides his figure. Fly out from the shadows at the top of the cave. Groan. The sound of his flight suddenly changed. He chose the completely opposite path to everyone's escape and headed straight into the cave. Bang bang bang. Hit the road ahead. Jia Yan's crazy energy is rising again. The cave was already filled with giant cockroaches. The appearance of a flying animal that definitely did not belong to one of them immediately shocked all these flying figures. In fact, there had already been a giant cockroach flying and noticed Jia Yan's huge steel body. But I didn't expect that Jia Yan would be knocked down first. The approaching giant beetle had an ordinary body of 10 centimeters. Compared with his current body of more than 20 centimeters and a body with a heavy metal exoskeleton, it was basically the difference between an elephant and an ant. Collide. Bang. This giant beetle had no resistance at all, and was directly knocked away and flew far away. The wings are broken. Haha, I don't have to worry about the protected wings at all, I can have a blast. Jia Yan is sincerely satisfied with the T-shaped protective wing components of the metal exoskeleton. Keep hitting. Yin yin. Bang bang. He headed towards the direction where the army was spreading, and bumped into each one face to face. With his heavy body, and the fact that there are no purple beetles in the army of beetles, and there are only a few supergiant beetles, he is simply invincible. Bang bang bang. Several sounds sounded. When Jia Yan spread his wings, he was completely focused on his opponent's giant beetles and didn't notice them. Not far away, Next to the empty machine, there were 3 2-meter-tall giant monsters, and their eyes lit up. But after their eyes lit up for a moment, it seemed that for some reason, they slowly dimmed again. Still motionless. Jia Yan did not see this scene. Perhaps some of the besieging giant beetles have seen it, but it is impossible for these creatures to share this news with others. Bump, bump, bump. Jia Yan used all his strength, flapped his wings and struck forward. Along the way, he didn't know how many giant beetles bumped into his body. The one who was hit on the head was directly pierced by a sharp blade. The dead can no longer die. What hit his body was a heavy and hard metal exoskeleton, which made the opponent unable to resist at all and flew away hard. If you are lucky, you can still get up, but if you are unlucky, you may break your head or wings and you will never be able to fly again. Jia Yan is like a bull in the air with the collision skill. One hit directly. Bang bang bang. Not long after, Jia Yan only felt that the world in front of him lit up. He actually crashed out of the cave, killed and injured dozens of giant beetles, and came directly to the underground world. Happy. See if you dare to chase me again. He has the same body shape as last time. In addition to practicing his flying posture and slightly improving his strength, Jia Yan just has a metal exoskeleton this time, and the result is completely different. This time he can fight head-on with an army of cockroaches, like a fierce general fighting in and out of thousands of troops. It's no longer like he was being chased and running away in embarrassment before. There are more armies of worms waiting outside, but this is no longer a threat to me. I said that when I come back again, I will take revenge. I will kill you until my heart feels happy. Jia Yan's compound eyes sparkled faintly. He also wanted to get some so-called blue crystals from those humans. To him, that kind of thing seemed like a great tonic and a highly toxic drug. But facing those human warriors with extremely strong individual combat effectiveness, and whose opponents had firearms in their hands, Jia Yan was reluctant to take risks. So for the time being, let the army of cockroaches deal with these people. As for him, then deal with the army of cockroaches. Because relatively speaking, the army of worms is easier to deal with. That's right. I'll get the mysterious juice first. Then I'll deal with the humans. Maybe they've been killed or seriously injured by the purple cockroaches. Then the cockroach army won't grab the blue crystal from me, so wouldn't it be easier to succeed? Jia Yan has a good plan. He just needs to prevent a few humans from passing through the passage and to return to the ground. Everyone wants to kill me? Come with me. Go to the cave where everyone came down and kill them slowly. Just block the human route. Jia Yan looked outside the underground world, and saw giant cockroaches coming towards him one after another. His compound eyes flashed with ferocious expression. He flapped his wings and flew towards the cave that could lead to the outside world. The army of cockroaches all went crazy. They have another way of identifying creatures. Even though the giant flying monster in front of them wears a metal coat, they can still tell that this monster is the invasion that caused chaos in the entire underground world some time ago. But they also killed many of their kind. If he still dares to show up now, he must be killed at all costs. So most of the giant cockroaches flying in the sky all turned around. Chase Jia Yan. Swarming towards the cave where everyone entered the underground world. A long killing is about to begin from now on. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 108. Please collect. No one would have thought that there is actually a vast underground world 1 kilometer deep into the Earth's surface. And this underground world has a complete ecosystem, cultivating countless special-shaped creatures that cannot be seen in the surface world. However, this dreamlike world does not necessarily have the beauty of a fairy tale. He can also be full of blood and carnage. Da-da-da. The sound of the mini submachine gun resounded throughout the underground world. It was also mixed with the sounds of other firearms. Extremely intense. There's obviously a big war going on. But if there are humans who can observe the scene, they will find that the two parties fighting on this battlefield are not humans against humans, but between a few humans and a large group of giant insects flying in the sky. Human beings have returned to the underground world through the narrow exit at the back of the cave. But outside, more giant beetles are waiting for them. In desperation, these people had no choice but to save ammunition as much as possible and escape back to the cave they came from. The blue crystal is in the hands of the Japanese people. As for the huge machinery and the 2-meter-high 6-legged monster, it is impossible for these people to take it away. Only the Huaxia state, as the landowner, has the conditions to excavate and study it. However, the two Chinese military kings had no idea whatsoever of letting them take away the azure crystal. No compromise at all. This azure crystal is something that the two countries want to get their hands on, even if they are at odds with China. Obviously it is not that simple. Therefore, even in this desperate moment, they still have not given up hunting down several foreigners who have violated the border. Bang bang bang. Da da da. Waves of bullets rained down, and more than a dozen giant cockroaches rained down strangely colored blood. They smashed to the ground, but there were more successors, rising up crazily, charging towards the humans as if they didn't care about their lives. The scene seemed like one of those science fiction movies. Among the giant cockroaches, some were even half a meter long. They were several purple individuals. They spread their wings and flew, covering an area of nearly 1 meter. It can be said to be extremely terrifying. The behemoth. Hey, you Japanese people, hurry up and rush over to me, don't forget that we are people of the Star-Spangled Banner country. Do you dare to disobey us? Hampton's rough voice came out during the battle. He was commanding 3 Japanese people to clear the way for them. He and James, who was a super mutant, pointed their guns at the 3 Japanese people in front of them. Although the 3 Japanese people in front were also very powerful in combat, the man in front of them was, after all, one woman was still no match for the 2 Star-Spangled Banners who had a super mutant, and the strongest monster among the 3 of them, Shoiki Yokota, was injured and could not walk steadily, so the 2 Star-Spangled Banners were left to their own devices. Show off your power. Why don't you charge on your own? Why do we Japanese people have to listen to you Star-Spangled Banner people? The Japanese woman named Kimura couldn't stand it anymore and turned back to refute Hampton. Isn't that what you Japanese people are like? You dare not resist anything we teach in the Star-Spangled Banner country. You Japanese people are just dogs of our Star-Spangled Banner country. We tell you to go east, but you don't dare to go west. If you don't open the way for me, be careful, I'll shoot you all. Hampton's expression was arrogant, as if the Japanese people were treating him like dogs. Including the poisoned Yokota Shoiki, the faces of the 3 Japanese people changed. But now the situation is stronger than the people. The 3 Japanese people had to stand up. A man and a woman supported Shoiki Yokota and rushed to the road ahead. The nature of Japanese people is like this. As long as you are stronger than them, you can treat them like dogs. Buzz. Countless giant cockroaches are hovering above people's heads. They prick down one by one and attack with their tail needles. Although I don't know how many people were killed by firearms on the road, there were still many who fell and then attacked. No matter how strong the human beings are, they are still unable to defend themselves against attacks from the sky. Ah! The man who was supporting Shoiki Yokota screamed in agony. His neck was stabbed by a needle from a 20-centimeter-long supergiant beetle. Violent toxins erupted, and the toxins instantly flowed along the arteries in the neck to the brain. The man fell to the ground within a few seconds. My whole body was shaking and I couldn't walk with Ben. 1 horse. 8 square teeth road. Yokota Shoiki called out to the man, but there was no response at all. At this time, 3 more giant beetles flew down, intending to attack Shoiki Yokota and the woman from Okamura. "I'm sorry," Yokota staggered and grabbed the fainting man. Although one of his arms was poisoned by the poison of the purple fly, his vitality was still very tenacious, and the other arm that was not poisoned was still very strong. "Grab the man in your hand and lift him up to block him." 3 giant beetles pricked the body of the fainting man. The man's body trembled violently again. After that he never moved again. "Yomura. Let's go." Shoiki Yokota seemed to have regained his strength. He grabbed the Japanese man's body in his hands and staggered forward. "Very good, they have opened the way forward, let's go too." When the 2 Star-Spangled Banner masters hiding in the bushes saw this scene, their eyes suddenly lit up. They all rushed out of the bunker, followed several Japanese people, and fled quickly. Compared with the luck of these 2 groups, the Chinese soldier king's side was more miserable. These 2 people were the last to escape from the cave because their equipment was too heavy. As a result, not to mention intercepting the 2 groups of foreign experts in front of them, they themselves were surrounded by an army of cockroaches headed by 3 purple cockroaches. "Get out, get out. Get behind that rock, so you will be less vulnerable to attacks," Captain Bing Wang shouted repeatedly. Fortunately, these 2 Chinese soldier kings were covered in thick equipment, and their bodies had traces of at least 10 scorpion attacks. The most dangerous one is the captain of the soldier king. He has a hole in his chest where a purple beetle's tail needle stabbed. This time it was almost fatal. Because the purple worm's tail needle attack is almost as powerful as the bullet of a firearm. It stabbed with one blow. Although it could not penetrate the latest type of body armor specially equipped by China for the King of Soldiers, the force of the stab penetrated the body armor, and the impact caused one of the captain's ribs to break. Now he took a deep breath. They all felt so much pain. But they still have to fight, otherwise they will die. Therefore, the 2 Chinese military kings here gave up chasing the few foreigners who escaped, and used the huge rocks on the side as bunkers to carry out a reluctant defensive battle. The 2 groups of people escaping in front must be excited in their hearts. They must have thought that Huaxia, who knew nothing, stupidly sent the King of Soldiers to fight them. Not only did they lose 4 people on the way, but now they actually became their stepping stone, helping to hold back the large army of flying monsters. What is stupid? This is stupid. James and Hampton, 2 men of the Star-Spangled Banner, looked at each other while running. There was a kind of ridicule in their eyes. What is Japan? He is just a lackey of the Star-Spangled Banner. Once he is defeated by his own country in the World War, he will become a dog that can only bark and wag its tail vigorously to beg for mercy. This time they even sent out what are known as the top 3 absolute powerhouses in the world. In terms of strength alone, the 2 of them together are not enough to hold them with one hand. But what about now? This idiot-like combination even sneaked in quietly because of their cleverness. Why not just act as the trailblazer for these 2 people from the Star-Spangled Banner? As for China, it's even more funny. Although the Star-Spangled Banner helped them block most of the dangers, and even sent out spies and forces from all sides to allow them to reach this underground world almost at the cost of launching a war. But as the host, China might still not know where this place is, let alone how powerful that azure crystal is. Although this is due to the lack of intelligence in New China after the war, it still feels a bit silly. Although, those soldier kings faithfully performed their tasks and had been trying their best to intercept them, for which the 2 Stars and Stripes nation masters expressed their praise. But that's all I can praise. Playing tricks, but in the end our country with the Star-Spangled Banner is still not the strongest. This world is our Star-Spangled Banner world. The 2 Stars and Stripes nationals believed that the azure crystal was just left with Yokota Shoiki for safekeeping, and would definitely be handed over to them when they were out of danger later. Dare you give it? Shoiki Yokota, one of the top 3 monsters in the world, was seriously injured. They didn't mind letting this monster's legendary life come to an end. The two masters of the Star-Spangled Banner State both smiled confidently. This mission can basically be said to be completed. There are fewer and fewer giant beetles attacking a few people. The cave leading to the outside world is right in front of you. You can enter this cave through this creek blocking the road, and then return to the ground. Yokota carried the Japanese man who had lost his breath and ran to Shiyuin to the stream. A strange color flashed in his eyes. How could a world-famous monster admit defeat like this? Even though his country, Japan, is really playing the role of a lackey of the Star-Spangled Banner Kingdom, personally, he still has the so-called samurai pride. During the war that year, many comrades around Yokota Shoiki committed suicide by caesarean section after defeat because of this spirit. He did not die, not because he lacked the warrior spirit, but because he wanted to help the country prosper again. So on the recommendation of a mysterious research institute, he and nearly 200 battlefield veterans used the latest drugs developed by the institute. It is said that the medicine comes from the 3 research institutes above their heads. As a result, more than 200 veterans all died, and he was the only one who survived. He believed that he had inherited the spirit of those 200 people, so he did not complain about the country. Instead, he transformed into a national-level monster of Japan and has been active for decades. He is still fighting for the country even now. He didn't even know how many people he had killed in the Star-Spangled Banner country. How could you give up? General Yokota's eyes flashed with a fierce light. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 109. Please collect. 2 masters from the Star-Spangled Banner country in the rear appeared not far away from the 2 Japanese people. You cross the creek first. Hampton held the hand cannon Desert Eagle in his hand, pointing at Shoiki Yokota and the Japanese woman named Murakami. Listen to them. Shoiki Yokota's expression was a little strange, but after considering the distance, he still said to the woman next to him. The 2 of them shot out the rope equipment in their hands together. The head of the rope was attached to the boulder on the other side, and then the equipment was retracted. In an instant, there was a snap sound, and both of them crossed the river bank. As for the Japanese man, he was placed by the stream, probably becoming a delicious lunch for some giant creatures. Oh James, they're so cool, why should we dance? Isn't that nice? Hampton's face turned the color of pig's liver. He felt that he was really stupid for his thrilling jump into the underground world. Come on, Hampton, don't let them get away. James did not dwell on this issue with Hampton at all, but quickly followed the 2 Japanese people. They just want the 2 Japanese people to open the way, but they don't want them to really go ahead and run away. Otherwise, you won't be able to get the azure crystal. But soon, the 2 Japanese people will no longer need to lead the way. It will all depend on their mood whether they will be released or killed. Just as the 2 Stars and Stripes nationals also used the equipment to pass through the stream, quickly catching up with the 2 Japanese nationals. They suddenly heard the Japanese woman who arrived first in the cave scream in surprise. What happened? The 2 Stars and Stripes masters looked at each other. Then, their expressions changed. Because before the 2 of them, in the originally empty cave, a giant cockroach suddenly appeared that made their livers and gallbladders split apart. Shoiki Yokota and the woman named Yomura were instantly surrounded. Retreat, the 2 Stars and Stripes men retreated quickly. But it was too late to retreat. The stream lay in front of them and it was too late to use rope equipment to cross. They are also surrounded by cockroaches. At the moment when these 4 people were surrounded by the army of cockroaches, they had no time to pay attention to why these giant cockroaches gathered in this cave. Not to mention that a life and death battle was also taking place in the cave. Very good, these people are here. Jia Yanchuan is wearing a metal exoskeleton and is deep in the cave, constantly attacking the giant cockroaches around him. He was quickly avoiding the tentacles and exposed wings of these moths that might attack. Bang bang bang. Kill kill kill. Jia Yan was surrounded by giant cockroaches and kept colliding with him. The sharp blade on the head of the metal exoskeleton is his strongest and most useful weapon. The two long knives on the front feet are sharp knives that are suddenly drawn out when the head cannot be attacked. Since I am not very skilled yet, my two long blades are not very accurate yet, and sometimes I often miss when I attack the beetle. However, this is enough. Surrounded by 300 to 400 giant beetles, Jia Yan showed his good condition as he was training to fly in the outside world. Moving around in a small area is like a nimble bat, reaching a dizzying level. As a flyer himself, Jia Yan was surrounded by enemies. In the end, he almost couldn't tell the difference between up, down, left and right. He was in a state of weightlessness and all he knew was to keep flying. Keep killing. The blade is sharp. Since there was frog blood on the forefoot blades, after such a long flight, Jia Yan found that the green blood had dried up and stuck to the surface of the blades. As long as he uses these two blades to cause minor injuries to the giant insects, those giant insects will always fall to the ground very quickly and completely lose their ability to fly. It turns out that the blood poison of that big frog is actually so strong, so I want to make good use of it. After Jia Yan discovered this, he focused his main attack methods on a pair of front feet during the killing. Therefore, he developed and used a series of attack methods such as stabbing, picking, slicing, slashing, and chopping with his front feet. These attack modes are indeed very useful. I must remember this actual battle. There are not many training opportunities in this kind of group battle. Jia Yanfu's eyes lit up. He knew that there would be few opportunities like this in the future. Countless beetles, carrying the inertia of forward motion, bumped into him one after another. There are also some tail needles poked out. However, the attack power of their tail needles is not as good as that of purple flies, so they all hit the surface of Jia Yan's tough metal exoskeleton and came back in vain. At most, it makes a crisp ding sound of gold and iron. It's great. How could I kill so happily before? This metal exoskeleton is simply my most useful idea. Jia Yan felt extremely happy. His flying posture becomes more and more light and flexible in this battle where the enemy advances and we retreat, and the enemy retreats and we advance. Moreover, he developed the attack modes of the two blades on the front feet one by one. And from the initial greenness, I gradually became a little more proficient. The most convenient attack modes for the forefoot blades are naturally insertion and stabbing. As for inserting, as the name suggests, when fighting with the enemy or at close range, insert the knife into the enemy's vital part. This kind of attack requires a little effort, especially if the enemy is hard protected. If his front feet are not strong enough, he may not be able to penetrate. As for stabbing, it is more labor-saving and more effective than inserting. However, when stabbing, the inertial force of the body's flight is usually used to directly penetrate the enemy's vital points. Such an attack not only requires high body control, but also requires only with one attack power. After stabbing, the two will be completely close to each other, so if one stab cannot successfully kill the opponent, then they can only engage in close combat. Stab you to death. Jia Yan aimed at a supergiant cockroach and stabbed it hard while flying. This is a supergiant bug almost the same size as Jia Yan. In this army of bugs without purple bugs, its status is equivalent to that of the other supergiant bugs. It can't be easily defeated. Will participate in the battle, but stay on the outside, making some actions as if commanding ordinary giant flies. Jia Yan has been targeting these supergiant beetles for a long time. Now it happened that he had forced back an ordinary worm, and the passage between him and the supergiant worm was completely opened. So he slammed forward and stabbed the supergiant worm with his front feet. The supergiant cockroach obviously did not expect that Jia Yan would abandon so many ordinary cockroaches around him and launch an attack on him, a great general. It flapped its wings quickly, trying to escape. But the reaction was too late. Poof! Jia Yan's right front foot was like a sniper shooting from a distance, and the sharp blade pierced directly into the center of the supergiant cockroach's chest. This supergiant cockroach flapped its wings crazily, and even though it was still alive, it arched its abdomen and attacked Jia Yan with its tail needle. But the sharp blade that completely penetrated his chest also contained the strong poison of a giant frog. The main function of this poison is to paralyze the nervous system of the enemy or prey, making them unable to struggle for a short period of time. So the supergiant beetle raised half of its abdomen, and soon lost its strength. When its tail needle touched Jia Yan's metal exoskeleton, it just lightly touched it. Poof! Jia Yan used a pair of mid-legs to push away the supergiant beetle stuck on his front feet. And his body has already withstood no less than 10 tail sting attacks from other ordinary beetles. When these ordinary worms saw the supergiant worm being stabbed by Jia Yan, they all attacked at the risk of their lives, trying to save their leader. But this is no longer useful. There's no way a cricket with its abdominal cavity pierced could survive. Buzz! Jia Yan flapped his wings again, and started killing crazily among the army of cockroaches whose number seemed to be undiminished. The blood of those big frogs is really useful. Although it is not as effective as the bottle of CHR-379 virus hanging on my body, its quantity is much more than that of CHR-379 virus. I must go back and collect some more later. The gunfire outside the cave is still ringing. Several human experts are going crazy. This underground world is so dangerous. They didn't expect that just some creatures that looked like thin-waisted wasps would corner them all. Although these bee-like guys have huge bodies, they are still nothing compared to humans. But as for bees, the small ones in the outside world are also frowned upon. There are so many giant bees in the underground world with their bodies enlarged dozens or hundreds of times. It should be said that these masters' it has lasted so long under the siege of the thin-waisted wasps. It's already quite rare. Yokota Shoiki, I can't hold on any longer. You should go first. Even if I risk my life, I will block the attacks of these monsters for you. The Japanese woman Yomura who was with the monster Yokota had 3 bloody holes on her back that were punctured by cockroaches, and there were puncture wounds oozing blood on her arms. Fortunately, these were injuries caused by ordinary giant cockroaches, and the toxicity was not considered violent, so she could barely move. Then I'll trouble you, Yomura. Yokota didn't even think about it and ran directly into the cave. The gun in Yomura's hand was completely empty of bullets. She stretched out her hand and drew it at her waist. Pull out a 40-centimeter long military spear. Kill, she made a very heroic female cry. Then he stood behind Shoiki Yokota and slashed at the giant flying beetle while retreating. There were constant tail needle attacks pricking her body, and she suffered a fatal attack on her shoulders, abdomen, chest, and even her face. But she didn't even scream in pain. This Japanese woman is desperate for her life. The 2 Star-Spangled Banner masters following behind looked at each other in surprise. But this is not the time to admire and marvel. These 2 people also seized the opportunity and hurriedly followed the path that the 2 men took and rushed into the cave. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 110. Please collect. The 2 parties were very close, only less than 5 meters apart. They were all injured. After all, it was impossible not to be injured under the siege of a giant moth of this size. Shoiki Yokota, who rushed at the front, had stab wounds on his back and arms. The Japanese woman had dozens of wounds, large and small. If there were no accidents, this would be her last shining moment. Even though she was probably a famous strong woman in the Japanese country, she was destined to die in this underground world. As for the two star-spangled banners at the back, although they seemed to have taken a lot of advantage along the way, they still suffered no less attacks. So in addition to the initial attack on his arm, Hampton now also suffered stab wounds to his back and shoulders. As a super mutant, James's golden pupils are even more intense. Although he only suffered a stab wound on his back, it is foreseeable that when his super mutant strength returns to its peak, what he said, it is dangerous when a weak period occurs. These people are racing against time. But Shoiki Yokota, who was running at the front, stopped immediately after seeing the scenery inside the cave through the dim light. Shoichi, the Japanese woman behind Yokota, who was desperately trying to deal with the worms behind Yokota, was also stunned. She lost all the strength she had been holding onto. This time, almost all her strength was gone, and she could not stand firmly. She looked along where Yokota was looking. Oh my God! The woman was shocked. The two star-spangled banners who followed behind also stopped. There was a sense of shock and despair in their eyes. Is this the way God wants to cut them off? Forgetting the dozens or hundreds of giant cockroaches in the outside world, why are there at least 300 or 400 of these flying monsters gathered deep in this cave, right at the key point of the passage to the outside world? It was clearly not there when they came down before, but now it actually occupies their only way forward. How many people are desperate? These giant beetles seemed to have gathered together in the center. There were too many giant beetles in the center, so their side was blocked and they couldn't see clearly what was going on inside. When the giant beetles on the periphery saw these humans approaching, they naturally divided their forces, and almost 50 or 60 of them rushed towards the two groups of intruders. These foreigners are here, but the Chinese military kings are not here. Jia Yan read the news online and knew that the Chinese warriors who were chasing the Star-Spangled Banner were none other than several military kings. I could see those two soldiers kings before, but now I can't see them. Do you died? Or was it held back by an army of scorpions somewhere else? This has nothing to do with me. Anyway, all I want is the blue crystal. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed. The giant beetle sent out a detachment to attack these foreigners. He wanted it. It's best if you can kill these foreigners. If you can't kill them, it will just kill the opponent's bullets. Collide. Jia Yan was wearing a metal exoskeleton and collided directly with the body of a supergiant scorpion. The sharp blade on his head plunged hard into the opponent's abdomen. Without waiting for the opponent to react, he pushed the opponent away from the blade with a long push. This supergiant cockroach just whirled and fell to the ground. Although it would not die temporarily, it was very painful just looking at it. Buzz. The flying postures of the entire army of cockroaches in the cave became chaotic. This flying creature is so powerful. They dispatched 300 to 400 tribesmen to fight with him, but they didn't injure him at all. His body was like a hard rock, no matter how hard it was hit or stabbed, it couldn't be broken. His attack was more like a gust of wind, with those sharp blades quickly harvesting the lives of the scorpions. His figure is even more weirdly flexible. The body shape is obviously not much different from that of a supergiant dragonfly, but it is extremely dexterous and light. Combining a series of powerful features, this flying monster is so powerful that it scares the cockroaches. These flying creatures don't know how much training Jia Yan has gone through since he was driven away in a panic last time, let alone how much effort he put into the metal exoskeleton on his body. In short, it's really not an accident that he will become the giant cockroach killer he is now. But it is a necessity. Surrounded by the army of cockroaches, the battle between the flying creatures is still going on. In the battle group not far away, several strong human beings were also fighting fiercely against the swarming army of cockroaches. Time passed by minute. Oh, God! These monsters are attacking that flying machine we saw before. Finally, after an inadvertent glance, the old-looking middle-aged man among the two stars and stripes nationals caught a glimpse of the metal body surrounded by the army of cockroaches. This body is extremely fast. Surrounded by giant cockroaches. Attracted by his voice, several others also looked at the dark metal machinery in the battle. No. That's not a mechanical creature. What on earth is this? After Hampton screamed, he finally saw Jia Yan's flesh and blood body hidden under the metal body at close range, which did not resemble metal. This is not a metal machine, but some kind of terrifying flying creature. He was actually wearing a metal armor and fighting to the death with countless giant beetles. A few dozen of these giant beetles could almost wipe them out. However, this flying creature wearing a metal armor actually fought against 300 to 400 of them by itself. Moreover, there are already no fewer than 50 or 60 giant moths on the ground, either dead or seriously injured. Horrible. A creepy feeling suddenly filled the bodies of several foreigners. What exactly is this? In the surface world before, 2 people from the Star-Spangled Banner even took action against him. But if they knew at that time that this flying metal was such a powerful thing, how could they dare to do it? Although combat effectiveness cannot be simply compared. After all, this creature is also a flying creature. Because it has a metal exoskeleton as equipment, the dragonfly is almost unable to harm him. This results in such a shocking record. It cannot be denied that this monster is definitely no less powerful than the previous purple dragonfly. Fighting power. Even because of the tightly guarded metal exoskeleton, he may be more terrifying than the purple worm. Buzz. Jia Yan doesn't care at all about being seen by these humans. He can be sure that these humans are almost out of ammunition. Even if there is a little left, it is the last thing to save their lives. And now, all of them are seriously injured. The Japanese woman can't even stand firmly. She needs to lean against the wall to barely slash the attacking giant beetle with her military thorn. So he is not afraid of these people. The task of intercepting them has been basically completed. Now it's time to see whether I will go over and deal with them personally, or I will lure these armies to kill them. Jia Yan's compound eyes were dim and he was making his own calculations. Of course it's best not to take risks, so I'll fly up the passage quickly. These cockroaches will definitely chase me for a while. But the oxygen is thin up there, and they will return to the cave like the purple cockroach that chased me before. Then these humans will be in trouble. Jia Yan's mind moved very fast and he thought of a solution almost instantly. That's right, let's do it. Just when Jia Yan was thinking of this idea, he wanted to spread his wings and fly into the cave passage and quickly approach the ground. Buzz. There was a sudden commotion among the more than 200 giant moths surrounding Jia Yan. A supergiant dragonfly seemed to be dancing in the air, constantly flying in weird postures. One after another giant cockroaches are responding to it. Jia Yan's body, which was about to spread its wings, suddenly paused. He was a little shocked to see that the army of cockroaches surrounding him suddenly turned around one by one and flew out towards the underground world outside the cave. They actually gave up. This was so cruel that it actually made these giant scorpions, who were not afraid of death, even give up their attack in fear. Jia Yan couldn't help but be stunned as he watched the flying figures flying away one after another. It seems that I killed the opponent too hard. This wave of giant beetles retreated, and together with the small team that surrounded the crumbling Stars and Stripes nation and the Japanese masters, they also fled hastily, as if they were afraid that the terrifying metal monster behind them would pursue them. The 4 foreigners did not expect to be saved. They stood there panting heavily, and then looked at the metal creature hovering in the air with vigilance in their eyes. Jia Yan looked at a large wave of more than 200 giant cockroaches fleeing away. He also felt a little tired at this time. Although the underground world has extremely high oxygen content and the mysterious substance in the air, Jia Yan's body consumes very slowly, but it cannot withstand such a long battle. Jia Yan felt very happy after killing so many giant beetles. Since the other party escaped, there was no need to pursue them. Besides, He has more important things to do. Jia Yan turned his compound eyes to the four foreigners. Oh, this monster is looking at us, James, what should we do, run away or fight? Hampton looked at the flying monster flapping its wings in mid-air. He had obviously not been too frightened when being chased by a bunch of giant cockroaches before, but now he felt slightly chilly and couldn't help but swallow his saliva. James next to him did not answer, but the golden touch in his eyes became more conspicuous. Both of them suffered from injuries. One of James' legs was no longer flexible, and there were 7 or 8 blood holes in his arms. It was only the super mutant's sharp physique that supported him. It won't cause you to be unable to move. Hampton was stabbed in the chest by a supergiant worm-like needle, and streams of blood overflowed from his chest. If you guessed correctly, his lungs were damaged. Now he only relies on the tenacity of a strong man to survive. Hold on. As for the 2 Japanese people standing in front of them, the monster Yokota held a katana in one hand and panted slightly. But his eyes, which looked solemnly at Jia Yan, still had a cold light. After the Japanese army left, the Japanese woman leaned against the cave wall and gasped, and then blood gushed out of her mouth. Then he stretched out his fingers, as if he wanted to touch Yokota Shoiki, who was standing not far away, with some special feeling of friendship, but when he lifted his fingers halfway, they softened. She also fell to the ground, no longer breathing. There are 3 strong men left in the human world, and among them there are even the top 3 super monsters in the world. They no longer investigate what kind of monster is in front of them, because now is not the time to investigate the origin of the other party. If you want to escape, there is only one way. Kill each other. 3 vs 1. Jia Yan is still flying in the sky, blocking the front of the passage. In order to get the blue crystal, he will not let the other party leave. Now that it's time like this, then. Fight.